Session of the Portland City Council. This is September 5th, 2018. Is it working, Carla? Is there a...
I'm sorry, what was that?
Is the monitor working?
Yes.
Oh, it is. Okay, ours are still blue, but we can work on that in a minute. Carla, please call the roll.
Saltzman,
Here.
Udaly,
Here.
Fritz.
Here.
Fish,
Here.
Wheeler.
Here. Good morning. It's good to see you, Robert.
Welcome to the Portland City Council. The City Council represents all Portlanders and meets to do the city's business. The presiding officer preserves order and decorum during City Council meetings so that everyone can feel welcome, comfortable, respected, and safe.
Good morning.
To
Dan.
participate in council meetings, you may sign up in advance with the council clerk's office for communications to briefly speak about any subject. You may also sign up for public testimony on resolutions or the first readings of ordinances. Your testimony should address the matter being considered at the time. While testifying, please state your name for the record. Your address is not necessary. And please disclose if you are a lobbyist. And if you're representing an organization, please identify it. The presiding officer determines the length of testimony. Individuals generally have 3 minutes to testify unless otherwise stated. When you have 30 seconds left, a yellow light goes on, and when your time is done, a red light goes on. If you are in the audience and would like to show your support for something that is said, please feel free to do a thumbs up. And if you want to express that you do not support something, please feel free to do a thumbs down. Disruptive conduct, such as shouting or interrupting testimony or council deliberations, will not be allowed. If there are disruptions, a warning will be given that further disruption may result in the person being ejected for the remainder of the meeting. After being ejected, a person who fails to leave the meeting is subject to arrest for trespass. Thank you for helping your fellow Portlanders feel welcome, comfortable, respected, and safe.
Very good. Thank you. First up will be communications.
Item 926, request of Gary Renberg to address council regarding Harrison Street vacation.
Good morning and welcome.
Good morning. My name is Gary Renberg. I serve as president of Eastside Plating, a 72-year-old Portland surface finishing business. I'm asking today that the council provide continued access to our facility via an easement that was promised 2 years ago. My purpose is to preserve the 22 manufacturing jobs at our facility within the Central Eastside Industrial Sanctuary. The urgency of my communication is that the city is currently selling the property without first granting this easement. In 1963, ODOT acquired property adjacent to Eastside Plating planned for a freeway that was never constructed. Eastside Plating was permitted to use the property for employee parking for the following 50 years. For decades, the Southeast Store has been accessed to deliver critical chemistry via tanker truck regularly. In a 2013 building permit, this store was called out as the primary egress point for employees in the event of an emergency. In 2015, the city purchased the ODOT property and began street vacation proceedings for the adjacent Harrison Street. Although the Portland Planning Commission did not recommend vacating the street due to the transportation use required by Eastside Plating, in February of 2016, City Council chose to vacate the street anyway. This access was recorded as a street vacation ordinance, number 187-591. With Harrison Street to be vacated, Portland Bureau of Transportation engineers developed a workable alternative access immediately to the south of our building that would accommodate the tanker truck. The access plan was agreed to in June of 2016. The access alley would be 15 feet wide nearest the street, then reducing to 10 feet closer to the access door for employee egress. The alley would be paved, fenced, and curbed, and would be provided at no cost to Eastside Plating. The city has never completed those improvements detailed in the Harrison Street vacation ordinance. Since August of 2016, Eastside Plating has requested an easement to be drafted to ensure continued access to its facility multiple times, but these requests have been denied. In April of 2018, Eastside Plating drafted an easement proposal using the same footprint as agreed to in 2016. It was as is, with gravel, not paved, without curbing or a fence, for a price per square foot that approximated what the city had purchased the property for. We were again denied this request. In May of 2018, Eastside Plating reached out to the auditor's office to receive help from the ombudsman. The packet that you have been provided outlines that request for help. Additional meetings with the mayor's office resulted in no reasonable chemistry delivery or egress alternatives. The mayor's office is representing the street vacation ordinance has been completed. However, the details stated in the ordinance ensuring Eastside Plating's continued access have not been completed. I'm asking for the agreed-upon easement defined in the Harrison Street vacation ordinance to be issued. For 72 years, this business has contributed to the vitality of the Central East Side. 22 Portland manufacturing jobs at this location are at risk. Without access to the store, Eastside Plating's continued operation at the site is doubtful. Thank you.
Thank you. Appreciate your being here. Next individual, please.
927, request of Robbie Abalos to address council regarding lack of civil rights councils and oppression of activists.
Next individual, please.
928, request of David Keefe Davis to address council regarding city-sponsored political terrorism.
So I'd appreciate it if you don't have your G for S security goons like come up and rush me, so I can at least grab my camera and my stuff without being having these guys get in my face. And I do have PTSD, and so I don't need to get your retaliatory behavior from these guys getting in my face. So let's start my 3 minutes. You need to start my 3 minutes.
You're 30 seconds in. Continue, please.
No, I'm not actually. Do you want me to just come to your house, 2028 Southwest Jackson today, so I can finish up get my rest of my testimony? Okay, Ted Wheeler, I'll just do that. I'll see you at your house tonight, okay? I'll bring some pots and pans and some loud recordings of flashbang grenades so you can relive the August 4th incident outside of your house in the comfort of your own living room, okay? Well, last week, there was a cop watcher, Eli Ritchie, who's here, and he was in jail at this point last week because of Chief Outlaw, because she can't handle a couple questions. So she gets a stalking order because she's just like a slimy, slime bag politician like you, Ted Wheeler, you know? A little coward with your little fake ass beard. I mean, I liked you with your little baby face. It seems like that you've gotten more evil the more hair you grow, you know? Is that what's happening? Is your beard taking over your mind or something? I'm gonna go to your house though tonight, okay? To finish up my testimony, since you wanna cut me off. But you guys obviously are not in compliance with the DOJ settlement, and the COAB was used as a weapon against the mentally ill, which it's supposed to be there to actually help the mentally ill and get you guys in compliance with the DOJ, but you know, it turned into a weapon of war against the mentally ill. And you know that, right? That's why you guys had to disband it. So you guys are never going to be in compliance with the DOJ settlement. And the DOJ is pathetic anyways. You know, their level of compliance is not like actual civil rights or anything. So you guys can't even reach a minimum standard of compliance with civil rights.
Thank you.
And not warring on the mentally ill, right?
Thank you. Your time is up, Mr. Davis.
Yeah, and I'll see you at your house tonight, okay, Ted Wheeler?
Don't forget your, whatever that is.
Yeah. It's called a camera. I know you're a caveman. and
Okay, thank you, sir. Carla, can I ask you a question?
Thank you.
Generation proud boy.
Next
Carla,
individual.
we don't have something on the screen, but is it
I'll see you
broadcasting?
Yeah, it's my understanding IT is working on it.
I'll see you at your house
Very good.
tonight.
Thank you.
Is it?
It's here. It's up here.
It is
Yes.
broadcasting, it's just
Yeah.
we don't have it?
yeah, it's
Thank you.
broadcasting
So the
fine.
public can see it.
Public can
Yes, they
see it.
can.
Yeah, it's working.
Thank you.
Next individual, please.
929, request of Steve Spinett to address council regarding paradigm shift on approach to homelessness.
Good morning, sir. Thank you for being here.
Good morning, Commission and Mayor Wheeler. My name is Steve Spinett, and I'm a businessman in the city of Portland. I was also the former mayor of Damascus. So I want to talk to you about, pretty much just give you my opinion on the homelessness. 2 years ago, before the homeless sweep at the Springwater Corridor, I made friends with the homeless community. My automotive business borders about 500 feet of the corridor near Southeast 92nd Avenue. When I say made friends, I really did. I provided water, electricity, even had a barbecue for them. But mostly my relationship was an ongoing thing with them. I was known among them. I was allowed into any camp. They let me in. I knew their issues. 6 months of almost daily visits, I spoke hope into them. I told them their true identity. Most of them, all of the women that I talked to, but most of them began to cry when I told them who they really were. I don't believe they are really drug addicts. I believe that there's something deep inside of them that's far greater than that. And I spoke that to them. I gave them hope. I told them that I was able to put a longtime heroin user into a home with a family. I loved my homeless neighbors. I also had the safest business in town. On one side, and there was no fence separating my property with the homeless camp, was just a few feet away. It was just right there. Lots of homeless people and $100,000 Porsches and Mercedes right on the other side. And I had no problems. I found out almost all of those who were out there were drug addicts. I found this out only after I made friends with them. I saw what the young ladies went through, having to sell themselves for the next dose. I saw the perpetrators almost with the same MO, men from their early 20s to early 40s, almost all with black bags and old motorhomes, and the rape that happens in them. This is the point I want to make. 95% of these folks were drug users, primarily heroin and meth. I only met 2 families who didn't appear on drugs, to be on drugs. Shelters in affordable housing. I want to hear this right, because I don't want to be combative. Shelters in affordable housing is like giving pain meds to someone with an infected foot, hoping the infection goes away. We must deal with the infection. I just have some suggestions, but I haven't delved down and deep into how the city operates as far as homelessness, but I see certain things that have raised a concern. First one, correctly identify the problem. I say over 90% are drugs and mental illness. Work with the state of Oregon and other municipalities on the mental illness concern. Treat drug dealers as criminals. Small drug dealers, big drug dealers, they're all the same to me. Give Portland a reputation of a bad place to be if you're going to sell drugs. If possible, reappropriate money away from affordable housing and build prisons to incarcerate the dealers through due process, of course. channel money to drug rehabilitation facilities. Oh, okay.
And did you provide us written testimony?
I do, and I can hand it.
Okay,
to-
and I extended it for security reasons. You mentioned you were going to be combative, and we don't want that. So,
I'm not going to be combative.
okay, great.
That's what I
thought I heard that.
Okay.
Great, thank you for your testimony, and I'll appreciate your written testimony.
That's a good idea.
Next individual, please.
Item 930, request of Tamara DeRitter to address council regarding short-term housing enforcement.
So, folks, people are trying to make me the microphone cop today. Let's not do that. All right? 3
Right.
minutes is plenty of time to be able to make a statement. Let's stay within the 3 minutes so that we don't have to do it. Thank you.
Good morning. I'm Tamara DeRitter. I'm the chair for Rose City Park Neighborhood Association, and I'm here to talk to you regarding our call for short-term housing enforcement to address Portland's housing needs. This is Neil Chowdhury,
Chiro. I'm a member of the board as well of the Neighborhood Association.
Nice to meet you. Thank
and
you.
he's 15-year mayor of Prince Edward Island.
In Prince Edward Island, Canada, many years ago.
Okay. So he's here for support and questions if you have any. Thank you for the opportunity to
And Rob,
speak.
just a little concerned, I think we now have an unlawful quorum of mayors in this chamber.
That's right. I'll go to my room.
I'm here to talk to you regarding the issue, and one that you can act on today. Yes, we are in a housing crisis here in Portland. That part is not new news, but many of you have forgotten that the weak regulation and lack of enforcement of the Airbnb-type rentals has increased house scarcity as well as rental prices. Think about that for a minute. It's been 4 years ago now since the City Council approved this ordinance. Since that time, the number of rentals has grown to 26% annually in Rose City Park neighborhood alone. Over 4 years prior to that, the rental properties remained virtually the same as growth rate, 0. In general, we can all agree that more rental properties is a good thing. It's more space for new residents in our community. However, in this case, according to Airbnb, over 50% of those rentals are available all of the time, meaning they are short-term rentals. And in addition, 72% of those rentals are entire homes. The rampant use of whole house rentals does not meet the code. Short-term rentals must be accessory to the household living use at the site. It is time for the City Council to step up its game and either enforce short-term rentals as an accessory to the primary use or get rid of this option. In a city where 80% of the short-term rentals continue to be unregulated, I can only say shame on you for continuing this abject failure of a policy. Yes, short-term rentals can bring some needed income to families trying to deal with increasing costs just to live in the city. But a homeowner providing the public short-term housing as an entire house is not acceptable. Providing short-term housing is a privilege, not a right. If your BDS staff is unable to do this enforcement, we recommend that the city offer a finder's fee for a legal unit and turn it in. It is an unfortunate reality that the City Council trusts its staff to provide truthful documentation in their ordinance proposals. But as a community, we can ill afford supporting short-term housing at the expense of our residents and livability. With increasing density, such as the proposed residential infill project, there is no guarantee that the majority of these new units will not end up as short-term housing. It is this day and age of realizing unintended consequences that it's important for us to keep an eye on who will benefit the most out of creating more units per lot in a single dwelling zone.
Thank you.
Thank you.
I appreciate it. Thank you both.
Mayor,
Commissioner Daly.
I'd just like to respond to some of your comments as the very recent commissioner in charge of BDS and perhaps one of the most vocal critics against short-term rentals on council. I want to tell you that I share your frustration, but explain to you how challenging enforcement is when we don't have the data we need and we are still waiting on it. It's surprisingly difficult to prove that someone is not living in a house they claim to be living in. There are certainly some flagrant commercial renters on these platforms, and I don't understand why they're not being shut down by the platform themselves. It's also an incredibly expensive endeavor that we don't necessarily have resources for. So
That's why a finder's fee is good.
yeah, I am happy to entertain that, although it's not my bureau anymore. But I feel like I need to defend BDS staff a little bit because they don't have the information and tools they need. And we're in, I think, still in negotiations over getting host data that was part of an agreement we made in a lawsuit that's supposed to apply to all the short-term rentals. But I absolutely agree that it is a rampant problem, and we have to do better at enforcing. And once we have that information on the hosts, it will become exponentially easier to do that.
But it's been 4 years. And the fact is, if they don't come through, we should shut it down for a whole host. And I
I
have
don't
two
disagree.
sites that
Well,
have
this was-
permits, but they're doing a whole house.
Yeah. I wasn't meaning to engage you because,
Okay, I understand.
yeah, I just wanted to respond, but I'd love to talk to you further.
Good.
Yeah.
Thank you very much.
I'd love to follow up on this conversation.
Sure, yeah, if you're going to be
Absolutely.
around. I mean, I'm
Okay.
stuck up here for the next few hours, but.
Okay,
At some point.
Thank you very much.
Great. Thank you both. Appreciate it. Carla, have any items been pulled off the consent agenda?
None have been requested.
Please call the roll.
Saltzman,
Aye.
Udaly,
Aye.
Fritz.
Aye.
Fish,
Aye.
Wheeler.
All right, the consent agenda is adopted. So folks, there is a little bit of overlap in today's session in that new bureau assignments were made on Tuesday. So in a couple of cases here, we have, you're going to hear from commissioners who actually put the items on the agenda, and they will introduce an item. You will also hear from commissioners that are new in some cases as well. So I just want you to be aware that there's sort of an awkward dynamic for this session and maybe the next one or two sessions as well. So our next time certain is not till 10:30, so let's go for the second readings on the regular agenda. Could we start with item 940, please? That is the second reading.
Authorize the Bureau of Transportation to permit construction of sky structures serving assisted living and retirement centers outside of the Central City District.
Colleagues, is there any further discussion on this item? Please call the roll.
Saltzman,
Aye.
Fritz.
So again, Commissioner Saltzman, thank you for bringing this to Council. This is another step in making our city an age-friendly city, and I'm very happy to support it. Aye.
Fish,
Aye.
Wheeler.
I enjoyed the conversation we had on this the other day, and I appreciated not only Commissioner Saltzman's bringing it forward, Commissioner Fritz, I think you made a really good point as well about, let's try and be holistic in our approach to this question rather than focus on individual centers, and I agree wholeheartedly. I vote aye, the ordinance is adopted. Next item, number,
947.
yeah, looks like 947, that is correct. Please call the roll.
947, ratify a successor collective bargaining agreement between the city and Portland Police Commanding Officers Association relating to the terms and conditions of employment of police lieutenants for 2018-2020.
Please call the roll.
Saltzman,
Aye.
Fritz.
So I stated my opposition to this early regarding the level of salary increase. The market comparators don't support this level of increase. I found the arguments about compression with lower positions unpersuasive. There was good testimony last time we heard this about that we haven't gotten any policy improvements in return for this 4% increase. and I am very troubled by that. Thank you, but that's really distracting.
Folks, again, and some of you know this because you've heard this before, you heard the rules up front. Rather than interrupting the meeting, a simple thumbs up or a thumbs down works. Very good. Thank you. Appreciate it.
And this is a small item in total, but increasing a clothing allowance from $390 to $700 a year for people who are making over $100,000, it just doesn't seem reasonable to me. No.
Fish.
Aye.
Wheeler.
So I support this. And first of all, I want to thank Labor Relations, and I want to thank HR Director Cyril DeSummers McGee. They worked very, very hard on this. This aligns the PPCOA with the PPA to resolve the compression challenges. And I hear what my colleague is saying, that in her opinion, it doesn't go far enough, and I think that's a fair opinion. It aligns the PPCOA with the city regarding the preventative care initiative. That's health care. I think that is a very, very important get in this contract negotiation. It's a cost-effective contract in that it shifts the wage scale as opposed to giving across-the-board increases. And I think over the long term, that will serve us well. It identified underutilized resources and repurposed them to pay down the cost of the 2018 to 2020 contract, and given that the total budget for this contract increase is $128,000, I thought that was worthwhile. It was reported to me both by PPCOA and HR and Labor Relations that this was a very collaborative effort, that there was a good back and forth, that it was long-term. Both sides felt that they were heard. And it memorialized current practices that weren't in the contract previously, including performance evaluations, the vacation VEBA contribution, and the sick leave VEBA contribution. I vote aye. The ordinance is adopted. Next item, please, 948.
Create a local improvement district to construct street, sidewalk, and stormwater improvements in the Southeast 102nd Avenue and Woodstock Boulevard Local Improvement District.
Any further discussion on this item, colleagues? Please call the roll, Carla.
Saltzman.
Aye.
Fritz.
Aye.
Fish.
Aye.
Wheeler.
Good work, everybody. I vote aye. The ordinance is adopted. And the next item is 950.
Authorize the Bureau of Environmental Services to acquire certain permanent and temporary property rights necessary for construction of the Hillsdale Crest Rainfall-Derived Infiltration and Inflow Project, number E10941, through the exercise of the city's eminent domain authority.
Very good. Please call the roll.
Saltzman.
Aye.
Udaley.
Aye.
Fritz.
Aye.
Fish.
Aye.
Wheeler.
Aye. The ordinance is adopted. Next item, please, will be 941.
Appoint Bob Galacio to the Plumbing Code Board of Appeal for a term to expire September 4, 2021.
Today, we're appointing Bob Gagliasso to the Plumbing Code Board of Appeals. Currently, the board has two members, Victoria Haynes and Vernie Santos, and we appreciate their service. Terry Whitehill with BDS is going to present the proposed appointee, who is here with us today, and we appreciate that.
Mayor Wheeler, thank you for letting us be here today and to bring this forward. I'm pleased to have Bob Gagliasso with me today. Bob has been in the plumbing business for over 40 years, currently a contractor. He is vice president of the Cascade chapter of the International Association of Plumbing and Mechanical Officials and a veteran of the U.S. Air Force. If you have any questions, Bob or I would be more than happy to answer.
Colleagues, first of all, I just want to say thank you very much for being willing to step forward. I know the pay is not very good. You come with deep experience. Could you tell us just a little bit about why you wanted to be on this board and what you think you're going to be able to accomplish, or what you hope you'd be able to accomplish as a member of this board?
Well, as an active contractor of commercial and residential in this city, it's most of all of my work is here in this area, and I'm pretty versed on issues and adverse plumbing conditions and obstacles that may come about because of code or other. I'm pretty passionate about my trade, and trying to instill that in the trade is to have an understanding of what goes on in this world of plumbing. It could be adverse, but I'm involved, as Terry said, with the IAPMO committee and trying to introduce new things and new ideas to that trade. And so it's imperative that somebody that's, versed can give a pretty fair opinion of what can happen and what can't. I had a history of 17 years of being the plumber at the airport, the only plumber they had. And then during budget downturn and all that, top pay goes out. That's it, you're done. And so I started up on my own. So as far as adverse conditions and being versed and known in the community, I think I could be a pretty good addition.
Sounds like it. Great. Thank you, colleagues. Any further questions? I'll entertain a motion.
Would move adoption of the report.
Second?
We have a motion from Commissioner Saltzman, a second from Commissioner Udaly. Please call the roll.
Saltzman,
Well, thank you for your willingness to serve. Appreciate it. Aye.
Udaly,
Thank you for your service. Aye.
Excuse me. This is a report. You're, Mr. Walsh, this is. Excuse me. We'll take a recess for a moment, please. Mr. Walsh, you heard the rule. Sorry for the delay. We did not get a chance yet to call the roll on item number 941. Carla, please call the roll.
We're on Fritz.
And the pressure is really on. I've had 15 minutes to come up with a really dynamic speech. And yeah, I'm just going to say thank you very much to the volunteer who's willing to serve on the plumbing board. If you're interested in serving on a city board or commission, please look online on portland.oregon.gov. There are many, many, many boards and commissions that we need volunteers for. Aye.
Wheeler.
I am very, very pleased with this appointee and very happy that somebody with 40 years of experience, hands-on experience, is willing to volunteer their time and their energy at the height of their career to come in and help us do things better. So this is great. And Commissioner Fritz is right. For just about any skill set in this community, there is a board or a commission where we could really benefit, and the public at large could benefit from your experience. So we always encourage people to get in touch with us and find out what kind of appointments are available, because there's a lot of them. I vote aye. The appointment is approved and the report is accepted. Item number 942, please.
Reappoint Zari Santner and Karen Loper Tracy, and appoint Janice Mason to the Portland Parks and Recreation Board Oversight Committee for a term to expire December 31, 2020.
Colleagues, the Bond Oversight Committee is composed of 5 distinguished community members. Each of them was selected by one member of the council. In making our selections, we looked for skill sets in finance, construction, community involvement, budgeting, and park services. Today, we have the pleasure of announcing a reappointment for 2 of the members and an appointment of 1 community member to our Portland Parks and Recreation 2014 Parks Replacement Bond Oversight Committee, as well as the appointment of a new member. The Bond Oversight Committee members are serving multi-year terms. Commissioner Fritz will speak to the charge of the Oversight Committee. Commissioner Fritz.
Thank you, Mayor. Implementation of the 2014 bond measure has been part of my focus for the past, since it was passed. And I'm very proud of the work that we've done. I appreciate each of my colleagues for appointing a community member to this committee that provides independent oversight to make sure that we are doing what we promised we would do to the voters when they approved the bond measure in November of 2014. $68 million to fix some of the most urgent needs in our parks, although we still need another $300 or $400 million to bring everything up to standards. So Commissioner Saltzman and Commissioner Fish's appointees' terms expired in June. Both of them have offered to serve on the Bond Oversight Committee again, and this action will reappoint both of them. Both Zari Santner and Karen Loper Tracy have worked in parks as employees and have been involved in promoting parks throughout the city. Dion Jordan, who was my appointee, has decided to step down, and Janice Mason has been nominated as the replacement appointee. Janice Mason is currently the chair of the Philippine Chamber of Commerce and has been involved in increasing opportunities for minority-owned businesses. And welcome our staff here to and our nominee. Thank you for joining us. Thank you.
Good morning.
Good morning. Sorry we're late getting back. My name is Robin Laughlin. I'm the Bond Program Manager with Portland Parks and Recreation. With me today is Janice Mason, our candidate for the Bond Oversight Committee. With your approval today, Janice will be joining the Bond Oversight Committee and helping to serve to help guide the Parks Bond moving forward. We appreciate the committee's keen insight and active volunteer service to the community on this important endeavor. Currently serving on the committee are Ken Richardson, the current superintendent of David Douglas School District, Jonath Kalan, the former business development coordinator for Hispanic Metropolitan Chamber, and Karen Loper Tracy, a former longtime Parkie who served in several different capacities, including volunteer coordinator, outreach and communications manager, and assistant director of Portland Parks and Recreation. Zari Santner is also on the committee currently. She is the former director of Portland Parks and is a landscape architect who oversaw the 1994 Parks Bond. The reappointment of Zari Santner and Karen Loper Tracy and the appointment of Janice Mason to the Bond Oversight Committee is the purpose of our agenda item today. Ms. Santner was the Director of Portland Parks and Recreation from 2003 until she retired from the City of Portland in 2011. Her nearly 30 years of park service were exemplified by her commitment to equity and design. The highlights of her career are varied and include such projects as the Powell Butte Nature Park, the Vera Katz East Bank Esplanade, managing the 1994 Parks Bond, and a strong public policy direction to make certain that parks are considered critical infrastructure in all citywide budgetary decisions. A landscape architect by training and a native of Iran, Santner brings a unique and comprehensive understanding of Portland parks to the committee. She served on the committee since its inception, and we are asking now the council reappoint her for an additional 1.5 term so she can see the program to the conclusion. Ms. Loper Tracy grew up in Portland and spent her entire career with Portland Parks and Recreation. Starting in college, she held various positions, including volunteer coordinator and outreach and communications manager. Her broad exposure to virtually every aspect of our programming makes her an invaluable member of the Bond Oversight Committee. She understands the roles and responsibilities of employees and volunteers, and understands how the park system can help, how upgrades to the park system help staff respond to our community's recreational needs. She also understands our budgeting protocols and how to monitor and manage funding to meet Bureau-wide objectives. She retired in 2012 after 4 years as assistant director and has served on many bond and levy programs during her time. Ms. Loper has also served on the committee since its inception, and we are also asking that she be reappointed today. And today, I have the pleasure of introducing Janice Mason to you. She, since 2009, she has worked as a marketing and communications leader at a Portland-based regional engineering and architecture firm. Her responsibilities include serving as a liaison for small business partnering and utilization in her company's corporate responsibility initiatives. She has worked in the A&E industry for more than 30 years, including time spent as a project manager on public and private landscape architecture projects. Through this experience, she has grown a depth of understanding of the design and construction process that we hope she can bring to our committee. Ms. Mason is also a Filipino-American and has resided in the Portland metro area for 20 years. In the community, she has served on the board for the Philippine-American Chamber of Commerce since 2013. The board's mission is to promote economic opportunities and goodwill for minorities and serve as a liaison for government agencies. Janice has supported the board with rebranding, increasing communications and visibility, and supporting minority-owned businesses. She was also recently appointed as the co-chair for the International Committee for the Oregon Association of Minority Entrepreneurs. I'm really excited to introduce you here today, and she'd like to share a few comments with you.
Thank you.
Thank you. Thank you, Mayor Wheeler and Councilors Udaley, Fish, Fritz, and Saltzman. And also thank you to Robin and the other members of the Parks Replacement Bond. As a volunteer in the community, a woman of color, I'm so excited to participate in this process. It's very important to me. As a young girl, I have some fond memories of going to the park across the street and playing with the neighborhood kids back on Guam. And so the park was practically my backyard. So now as an adult, I'm eager to apply my knowledge in working in the architecture, engineering, and construction industry to this process with the Parks Replacement Bond. Enabling transparency of taxpayers' funds is an important work, and I intend to do my best to my ability and in small way help young and old alike have fond memories in neighborhood parks. Thank you very much.
Thank you. We appreciate it. Thanks for your service.
Thank you.
So with your approval today, we look forward to continuing to work with and receive guidance from the Bond Oversight Committee with the support of Zari Santner, Karen Loper Tracy, and Janice Mason.
Mayor, I
Thank you.
move the report.
Second.
We have a motion from Commissioner Fish, a second from Commissioner Fritz. Carla, please call the roll.
Saltzman?
Well, I want to thank Zari Santner and Karen Loper Tracy and welcome Ms. Mason to the Oversight Committee. Aye.
Thank you.
Udaley?
Thank you for your service. Aye.
Fritz?
So it's been 4 years since we passed the bond measure. I'm really proud of the work that you've done. Thank you, Robin Laughlin, for your leadership here. I'm particularly impressed with Pioneer Courthouse Square and all the improvements there. And that's $10 million project. Really well done, and I appreciate your diligence and leadership. Thank you, Janice Mason, for being willing to serve as my appointee to this important committee. It's crucial that we have independent oversight to make sure that taxpayers and voters know that we've done what we said we were going to do with their money, spent it wisely, and hopefully that then they'll support further investments in Portland's parks and recreation system. Thanks also to Dion Jordan, the retiring former chair of the committee. He's been an absolute stalwart, and we appreciate all of his service to Portland Parks and Recreation. Aye.
Fish.
Well, the Parks Bond measure has been an unqualified success, and that's a testament to Commissioner Fritz's leadership. And so as the new commissioner in charge, we pledge to continue the momentum and to make sure the money is spent wisely. I was adding up doing the math on Zeri Santner and Karen Loper. I think together they have about 300 years of experience in this field, so we're very lucky to have them. And of course, Janice Mason, you honor us by accepting this appointment and serving on the oversight body. I look forward to working with you, and I'm honored this morning to vote aye.
Wheeler.
So one of my favorite aspects of Commissioner Fritz's leadership of the Parks Bureau has been her diligence with regard to the bond. And at virtually every opportunity, both in this chamber and in our one-on-one meetings, she has repeatedly stated the importance of this bond being successful and that we meet the absolute commitments that have been made to the voters who overwhelmingly supported this bond. And an important part of that accountability is the work that you will do and the work that you already do on this committee. And I would argue that you have been extremely successful and diligent in your oversight, and the public is better for it, the city's better for it, and I know the public feels well served. And so I appreciate, Commissioner Fritz, your diligent leadership over many, many years. Commissioner Fish, I know that you'll continue that important tradition, and all of you who have stepped forward to serve as volunteers in our community. I won't give the same speech twice, except to say we're really lucky. As a community, we're fortunate that we have people of your caliber who are willing to really engage in a personal way to help make it a better place for everybody. So I vote aye. The report is accepted. Thank you. We're going to move item 949 up. Colleagues, this item was noticed on the Tuesday memo as being referred to Commissioner Fish's office. Carla, could you please read item 944?
949?
I'm sorry, it's 949, correct.
Amend the Park System Development Charge Code to improve and clarify implementation of the program.
Commissioner Fish, it's my understanding you're pulling this back to your office.
Yes, Mayor.
Very good. Item 944, please.
944, adopt a new non-represented employee classification structure and compensation plan.
Colleagues, the city charter, section 4-2013, requires periodic review of the classification plan of all city service positions. The classification and compensation of non-represented positions have not been reviewed as a whole since the year 2002. Portland is rapidly transforming into a major city. In order to be responsive to the city's business environment, recognize changes in work that have occurred over the last 16 years, and recruit, retain, and motivate qualified employees, the City of Portland requires the development and implementation of an updated classification and compensation system for non-represented positions. A classification and compensation study of non-represented positions in the city has been conducted, excluding positions in the offices of elected officials. The City of Portland is rapidly transforming into a major city. The proposed classification structure and the compensation plan will allow the city to both assign non-represented positions and compensate non-represented employees. With us today to discuss this in further detail is Classification and Compensation Manager Elizabeth Nunes and Chief Human Resources Officer Cyrilda Summers McGee. Welcome, both of you. Thanks for being here.
Thank you. Good morning, everybody. As stated, I'm Elizabeth Nunes, the Classification and Compensation Manager for the city. and I have a story to tell. It starts in June of 2014, when you, council, approved a contract with Schoberg Evesheng Consulting to assist the Bureau of Human Resources to review and update the city's non-represented classification and compensation plans. The classification review portion of the study resulted in the recommendation to create 107 new non-represented classifications and replace and abolish the 418 current non-represented classifications. After concluding the contract with Schoberg Evesheng, the class comp unit internally in BHR conducted a compensation market survey based on the new classifications. What is before you today for consideration are the final new classifications and compensation structures resulting from this 4-year effort. There is no direct cost to create the new classification and compensation structures. No employees will receive an immediate increase to their current compensation. Some employees whose current pay is above the new maximum will have their pay red circled. What this means is they are not eligible for pay increases, including cost of living increases, until the pay rate is within the new pay grade for their assigned classification.
For the record, my name is Cirilda Summers McGee, Chief Human Resources Officer for the City of Portland, and I have a few statements in closing. The current class comp structure that we have lends itself to perceived and sometimes real have and have-nots. With this new system, which has 1/4 the number of classifications, you will create parity across the bureau, across all bureaus for similar work. This allows small bureaus, newer bureaus, and bureaus that share similar work to be compensated fairly and consistently. This structure creates parity based on scope of work, responsibility, autonomy, and risk. And it is a unified system based on how we value and support all employees across the system, and it removes speculation regarding how someone's classification or body of work is different from someone else's. This will streamline this and clarify it. The new system also allows us to revisit our current class comp structure and maintain its market competitiveness and equity. We're proud to have completed this work for the City of Portland, and I'm grateful to the heavy lift that the team made to establish this new structure, as well as the work of our workforce and our directors and managers who shepherded this process along, and I thank you.
Very good. Colleagues, any questions? Commissioner Saltzman?
Well, I have an amendment I wish to offer. So your presentation, that's it?
That is it.
Oh, okay. So Cirilda, maybe you could just remind me, I know, or Elizabeth, this came up in conversations we've had, but what percentage of non-reps get the full merit increase of 4.1%?
So not all non-rep employees are eligible for a merit increase. Anyone who's at top of scale does not get a merit increase each year, only the COLA. So of those who are eligible for a merit increase, approximately 60% are receiving the 4.1% merit increase.
Okay. And with this new scale, I mean, there will be employees now who are topped out that will be eligible.
That is correct.
For further merit increases. And I asked that question because that does relate to my amendment. And my concern is that merit increases are not really being treated as not being awarded based on merit. They're being awarded based on sort of peer group pressure. That's the way it's done here. Everybody expects to get 4.1% on top of the COLA. So last year, an average non-rep employee got, an 8% increase in salary. And so I want Bureau directors to really take some responsibility, and I want the Budget Office to help in that regard, and the CFO, to develop some guidelines for Bureau directors to be more selective in as I think what is meant by a merit increase, that it's not automatic. If you're just living and breathing, you don't necessarily deserve a 4.1% increase. It should be based on merit, on your performance. So there should be a scale of merit increases from 4.1 to 2% or something like that. So my amendments are designed to ask two things. One is to ask the city budget officer to report annually to council on changes in the average hourly rate for non-represented employees by bureau. And I'm sorry, I didn't hand out my amendment.
Yeah, you did.
Yeah, we got
Oh,
it.
you've got it? Okay.
No, I don't think I got it.
Okay. So that's the first part of the amendment. And the second amendment is to ask the city budget office and the chief financial officer to develop amendments to financial policy that would provide bureaus with the guidelines for budgeting and reporting on merit increases at the bureau level. And I think this will help, as I said, I think it will help bureau directors be more judicious in awarding merit raises. Bureau directors and other managers within bureaus, I should say. That's correct. It's not all bureau directors. And I do, because otherwise I worry about the fiscal impact of the automatic 4.1% increases as they've come to be handled. And I quote from the CBO analysis we all received this week about this item, and it says, at this point, the fiscal impact is unknown. And while the new structure does not require an immediate increase to an employer's pay, it does increase Bureau's exposure to higher personnel costs because employees that were previously at the top of range will no longer be, unless council explicitly provides greater funding, bureaus will have to more actively manage the awarding of merit pay increases, particularly in the short term. So I think these amendments are good. I hope they turn into financial policies that will, as I said, will help bureau directors and the other managers bring more focus and be more selective in the award of merit increases. So I offer those amendments.
Second.
Commissioner Saltzman moves. Commissioner Fritz seconds the amendment. We'll leave it open for testimony, and then we'll take it up as a vote afterwards. Does that complete your presentation?
It
Before
does.
you disappear, any further questions?
Yeah, have you had a chance to
Commissioner
see
Fish.
these amendments?
Yes, we worked in concert with Commissioner
So do you
Saltzman.
support these amendments?
We do support the amendments.
Thank you.
Great, thank you. Public testimony, Carla, please.
Yes, we have two people signed up,
Very good.
Nico Hanny and Charles Bridgecrane.
Good morning.
Good morning. I was hoping that Nico Hani would be able to testify for me, but and we may be back in some post-amendment. As to the amendments, I want to thank outgoing Commissioner Saltzman for bringing up a point. I think that what we would really like to get to is away from the nickel and dime paranoia and talk about ways that the most meritorious city employees, I mean, it's nice to say that every City of Portland employee is a great employee, but they're not cookie cutters and they're not homogenous. So we should reward the best of them with more than just a plaque. They should get the greatest increase in pay. And so I hope that all of you commissioners will work with your assigned bureaus to come up with structures that recognize the outstanding and truly excellent employees and make sure that those employees get the greatest merit pay increases. There's a big gap there. If we get a 4.1% for merit pay, then the top performing employee can get the 4.1%, and the employee that hasn't quite reached that level is still able to get 1%, 2%, or 3% annual increase on top of their COLA. So it does add a little bit of work burden for you as commissioners and for bureau chiefs, but I think that is the most important work for all of you to do, is to help us continually raising the bar for excellence in municipal employment. Thank you.
Thank you. Good morning.
Good morning. My name is Lightning Super Disrupt Attack Dog. I want to put a...
When did you change the name?
When did I?
Yeah.
That was just recent.
Okay.
But thank you. Thank you for
I'm a
asking.
close observer
That's more than
of
fair.
this.
Thank you.
I've gone 1 week, and all of a sudden, I don't recognize the name, so I just wanted to.
I'm not going to be the most popular person in this room. I'd like to see a freeze put on all city employees. I want to see an analysis done from the private sector to the city employee jobs and I want to see a balance created in line with the private sector. When we're talking fiscal responsibility, and if you watch what your good friend, President Trump, is doing on the federal level, he's beginning to analyze the jobs from the private sector to the federal employees, and he's trying to balance that out. And when we're looking at trade agreements with China and USA, and we're looking at these trade agreements, we understand now is the time to begin to balance fair trade and begin the balance process. And this is what we need to do at the city. We have directors at this city making outrageous amounts for their salaries. And I think it's too high. I honestly do. And I've been one of the only people that has ever sat up here and looked at the commissioners and the mayor and said, you're on the low side. Yours should go up. So we have to create a balance. And if anyone's going to do that, when we're talking fiscal responsibility, if we're talking more money going toward the homeless and getting more people off the sidewalks and getting more people into housing, there has to be a balance created. Somebody has to make a stand, and that's a tough stand to make. And trust me, you could very well end up having a special counsel in Robert Mueller overlooking you when you make those kind of moves. But it's time to make those moves. So if we're talking merit pay increases and all this COLA, I say put a freeze across the board and to begin to create a balance from the private sector to the city employees and look at that very close and balance it. Now is the time to do it. That's what they're going to do on the federal level. That's why they want Trump out of office. That's why they're going to push very aggressive to get him out of office. But it's not going to happen. He's going to get reelected. Fiscal responsibility. Thank you.
Thank you. Thanks, both of you.
So, Mayor, I have a question.
Commissioner Fish.
If we could have the professional team back.
Come on up. Thank you.
So, Elizabeth, I don't know whether you know this off the top of your head, but in thinking about Dan's amendments, it occurred to me that I don't know the answer to the following question. So if you could shed some light on it. The chief financial officer position, the chief administrative officer position, head of HR, head of legal, head of procurement, who is tasked with determining merit pay increases for those positions?
From my understanding, and I could be corrected, whoever they report to is supposed to complete a performance evaluation, and then based on that performance evaluation, determine what percentage they should receive.
So could you send me an email follow-up to this proceeding, just to let me know who is the person who is tasked with doing an evaluation of the head of the chief financial officer, the chief administrative officer, head of procurement, legal, and head of human resources?
I can tell you right now. So the CAO receives one from Mayor Wheeler. The CFO, the CHRO receives an evaluation and a subsequent merit increase from the Chief Administrative Officer, so Tom Reinhardt. And the Procurement Officer receives an evaluation and then a subsequent, if appropriate, merit increase from the CFO, Jennifer.
And then the head of legal?
And the head of legal receives it from Mayor Wheeler.
And your position?
The CAO. For myself and Jennifer Cooperman, we receive it from the CAO.
Okay. And also, could you remind us how many non-represented employees do we have?
Around 1,600.
Okay. Thank you.
Very good.
And how many of the non-represented employees are changing from being salaried to hourly under this reorganization?
We're still working through the final details, but
It's down to what at this point?
it's, I think, maybe down to between 30 and 50.
Thank you. And I very much appreciate that we've got a report coming back to council in 6 months with details of all of those positions. Thank you.
Absolutely.
Yeah, very good. And I just wanted to reflect on something that was raised during testimony, which is the comparators to the private sector. Could you talk a little bit about that and how the class comp study does that?
I could start. The city, as well as other public jurisdictions, when they go to look at compensation and determine who the comparables are, historically, for very good reasons, we only compare to other public sector jurisdictions.
And why is that?
That is because when you look at the employment agreement, which includes benefits, retirement, all the other things that come into a contract of work, if you will, they are different between the public sector and private sector. The private sector offers a lot of perks and special things that the city cannot do because we have tax dollars. We are governed by a lot of rules that the private sector doesn't have to do. What that does for employees, however, is provide a much more balanced quality of life. It also provides a level of security that does not exist in the private sector. And the kinds of work that are done generally don't go across the board to the private sector. So there have been discussions about, well, there are some things we should compare to private sector. And if we were unable to find comparables within other public sector jurisdictions, we would actually then go look to see what we could do to compare to private sector. Fortunately, that hasn't happened. All the work that we do exists in other public jurisdictions. So there are competitors. They are the people who have similar employment understanding that we have. They offer similar benefits. They have a similar quality of life. And so we've never had to go to private sector.
Very good.
And I'd also like to, I'm not trying to encourage our workforce to go to the private sector, but the private sector pays significantly more than we do in a variety of disciplines. And so we can't compete, and it becomes a major challenge for the city when they are saying, how do we compete with an Intel? How do we compete with a Microsoft or a Google for engineers, for legal counsel, for technical experts? And we just have a different ecosystem we express to them, but we definitely don't pay more than the private sector.
So in summary, then, it could be a difference of wage versus, you know, what I'll just loosely call benefits, healthcare, retirement, security, that sort of
And quality of life.
Very good.
Yes.
Thank you. Appreciate that. Any further questions? Very good. So first, we'll call the roll on Commissioner Saltzman's amendment. Actually, before I do that, I want to acknowledge the work of Commissioner Fritz. She had an amendment that she discussed previously, and that has actually been worked into the ordinance, and it requires reporting the results of each position classification within 6 months. And so I want to acknowledge that work and the fact that that amendment is now incorporated in the body of the ordinance. So thank you for that, Commissioner Fritz. And now we'll take up the roll, please, on Commissioner Saltzman's amendment.
Saltzman?
Aye.
Udaley?
Aye.
Fritz?
Thank you, Commissioner Saltzman, for these amendments. I will note that Parks already has guidelines as to how to do the merit increases, and to me, it's a commissioner in charge responsibility as well as the City Budget Office and Human Resources. I would hope that when the guidelines are developed, that they would allow for some flexibility, bureau to bureau, and indeed include, has the employee completed their work plan from the previous year, which is always something that I look at in my performance measures. Aye.
Fish?
Aye.
Wheeler?
I strongly support this package of amendments. Thank you, Commissioner Saltzman, for bringing it forward. The amendments are adopted. To the main motion, any further discussion? Please call the roll.
Saltzman?
Well, I want to thank Esmeralda and Elizabeth and the Bureau of Human Resources and the consultants that worked on this study. It is a significant achievement, I think, to reduce our number of classifications so dramatically that as is done in this new ordinance we're about to adopt. And while I do, have concerns about the right amount of discretion being concerned around merit increase awards, and I think these amendments will help develop better discretion in that regard. I do want to say that in general, I think our bureau directors are underpaid, even though they all make more than we do up here. I do think they are relatively underpaid. I mean, the top bureau directors in the city, I think, make around, under this new scale, make maybe $212,000 a year. I think that's about right. Which, for being a police chief or something like that, I know police chiefs in other cities take in a lot more money than our police chief, just to pick one top paid official. But in general, I think that's true of most of our bureau directors. I think they are relatively underpaid relative to what other public sector bureau director positions pay for these positions in different cities. But, so it is. And I do appreciate the work that's been done on this. Aye.
Udaley?
Well, sorry, I'm losing my voice today. Thank you, Serilda and Elizabeth and HR staff and consultants. I know this was a Herculean task. I think that our workers and the city as a whole is really going to benefit from everyone having greater clarity on what their job descriptions actually are, and as well as what they may be entitled to as far as pay and raises. Thanks for working with Civic Life on our concerns. I did feel like some of those positions had kind of fallen through the cracks, and I'm glad that you saw that issue. Still a little concerned about the budget impact to such a small bureau with a teensy budget, so we'll see. We may be asking for some help in the spring bump, but overall, I think it's really good, important work. Aye.
Fritz?
Thank you, Director Summers McGee, former Director Anna Canwit, and Elizabeth Nunes, who's seen it from beginning to end, and you must be really happy to have gotten to this point today. I appreciate all of your work. It's been a very challenging process, and one which employees have rightly been very concerned about. And so I appreciate your engagement with our employees and your willingness to continue to talk and help figure out some of the kinks with 1,600 employees and all these different positions. There are probably some things that we're going to need to fix along the way, and you can count on me to support things that, as you bring them back, as you find them out. I thank the Bureau Directors for their input, particularly Interim Parks Director Kia Selly. I do support this ordinance. I do have some misgivings. I understand that what we have now basically evolved over many, many years and was in great need of updating. And the Bureau Directors want this passed because it will provide greater certainty, improve their ability to recruit for open positions. I'm concerned about the number of unresolved issues around individual city employees' classification assignments. I appreciate the ongoing work on that. This project was not intended to change the scope of anybody's work in particular positions. And so if it turns out that the way it's worked, it's the sausage making works when the handle is turned, has the effect of doing that, I know that you're willing to address that as well. And so we certainly appreciate the work that our employees are doing and are not intending through this to tell people to stop doing some of the things that they're currently doing. If we do need to do that, then we're going to need to figure out how to create additional positions to take up those work assignments. This is particularly in parks. Thank you for the promise for the written report within 6 months. I am concerned about how the city is going to pay for the increased costs that will be generated in the compensation structure. We know that one of the reasons the Bureau Directors want to get this passed through is because some of the positions are severely underpaid. And so it seems reasonable that those pay grades would go up fairly quickly, so particularly where people have had many years of excellent performance and yet have been capped out. And so how we as a council are going to need to grapple for that. And Commissioner, I think, Udaley, I agree with your concern about small bureaus. It just actually doubles in the big bureaus because you've just got more employees who are then needing to go up. And there isn't parity between different bureaus. An engineer in parks doesn't necessarily earn the same as an engineer in one of the utilities. And so we need to grapple with that. I will be supportive of some kind of set aside for the increased costs to general fund bureaus. I will continue to be concerned about cross-bureau pay equity. In particular, I'm curious how the city will comply with the Oregon pay equity statutes, where these wide ranges between minimum and maximum salaries within each pay grade will exacerbate the problem of achieving equal pay for equal work. And how we're going to monitor that so that we don't get further out of whack is something that we're going to have to grapple with together. But a very, very good first step. Thank you very, very much. Aye.
Fish.
You know, if someone was here for the first time at one of our council meetings, and they saw this on the agenda, and they said 10 minutes was set aside, they would think this was a fairly inconsequential matter, pro forma, that we're taking up. And the truth is, this has been a very substantial piece of work. It's taken a long time and a lot of people to bring us to this moment. So, ladies, thank you for your leadership and for the teams that you've worked with and for all the people that Commissioner Fritz has identified. This is really a significant update to our compensation structure. And the goal from the beginning has been to help us recruit and retain the best talent. We have a problem in this city with a lot of people planning to retire in a short period of time. And I've heard from each and every HR director since I've been on this council that one of the things we don't do as well as we could is succession planning. So perhaps this will help us in both regards. I agree with Commissioner Fritz that we should have a conversation about a set-aside during the budget for some of the additional costs that general fund bureaus will incur. I had a 5-year honeymoon from having general fund bureaus. Now I'm back in the thick of it, and so my views will evolve accordingly. I appreciate the amendments that have been offered and the collaborative way they were worked out with the team in front of us. So thank you for your good work. I'm very pleased to vote aye.
Wheeler.
So I had the opportunity, and maybe this gets back to some of the public testimony, to take this and show it to some folks who, I guess, Cyril, I'd say they're your colleagues in the private sector, and I just wanted their opinion. And what was said universally was, why haven't you done this sooner? Why hasn't this been done? In an environment this competitive, when you need to recruit talent and you need to retain the talent you have, and everybody else in the world is trying to scrape off your top talent, why haven't you done this before? And the answer, of course, is because it's only one of many dominoes that fall in place. And Commissioner Fritz put another question on the table around equity, and now that question will be front and center, and we will have to address it. Commissioner Fish raised the other question around succession planning. That is something we also need to address, and again, this moves this front and center. But more than anything else, the next domino to fall is this. Once we have decided that we want to be competitive in recruiting and retention of the best employees, particularly in those classifications that we know are the hardest to fill and the most competitive, both to recruit for and keep those employees, it raises the question of priorities because we have finite resources. And I agree with those who say there are some near-term financial strategies that we can use to help ease the transition into this new paradigm, if you will, with regard to classification and compensation. But the longer-term question is really this. We are going to be paying more in those classifications where it is harder to recruit and harder to retain. And quality, particularly long-term employees who are at the top of their classifications currently, will find they now have headroom within those classifications. And so there will be additional costs in out years. And that puts more pressure on the City Council and on Bureau directors to really think long and hard about what our priorities are going to be in terms of service delivery. What do we want to be, what business do we want to be in? What do we prioritize, what works, and perhaps which business we should de-emphasize or potentially exit altogether. And I think that's one of the reasons why this doesn't get done more often, is because by addressing the first questions around recruitment and retention, you're creating a whole long list of what I will describe as politically awkward issues that you are then forced to confront. And I'm glad that this city council has finally moved this issue through. We have accepted it. We've worked it hard. We have limited the number of issues that are still outstanding. And I too appreciate the fact that HR is going to continue to work with specific employees that we can now identify that will have issues that result. I'll call them anticipated consequences that will result, and I think we need to exercise some flexibility since we're talking about a relatively small number of employees, but we've really put down a high bar for ourselves collectively by completing this process, and I believe you said the last time it was done was 2002. It probably won't happen again during my tenure, but I hope it won't be this many years before the city does it again, because it leaves this long gap where we are losing quality employees and we're failing to recruit quality employees, and we're seeing some of the consequences of that lag now. So thank you to the myriads of people who worked on this over a period of many years, and I just want to thank my current council colleagues for having the, I'm almost tempted to say the fortitude, but really just the good management sense to get this over the finish line. So thanks to all of you. I vote aye. The ordinance is adopted as amended. Thank you.
Thank you.
Next item, please.
Can we go to the time certain?
Yeah, time certain is next. And colleagues, just so you know, I'm going to have to do a hard exit at 11:30. Time certain 9:31, please.
Assess benefited properties for street, sidewalk, and stormwater improvements in the Southwest Golf Court, Spring Garden Street Local Improvement District.
Commissioner Saltzman.
Thank you, Mayor. I am pleased to bring this item before council today in collaboration with Commissioner Hugh Daly, who is the new Bureau of Transportation Commissioner in charge. This local improvement district at Southwest Golf Court and Spring Garden Street will allow us to continue to improve our sidewalk infrastructure, which helps to increase equity and livability in the area. And also, completion of this project does help, as we were talking yesterday about the Southwest Corridor Light Rail Project, begin to rectify deficiencies in advance of the anticipated high-capacity transit on Southwest Barber Boulevard. And then finally, I just would like to recognize Suzanne Stahl for her leadership on this project. Sadly, she passed away on November 14th of last year, before this project was completed. But her leadership and voice as an advocate for this project will be remembered. And with that, I'll turn it over to Andrew Abbey.
Thank you, Commissioner Saltzman. Andrew Abbey, Local Improvement District Administrator. I have a brief presentation for you. So this slide here has an overview map on the left of where this project is located in Southwest Portland, and then on the right is a detailed map of the Local Improvement District. So I want to just share with you three pictures. We combined construction of the park improvements with construction of the street improvements for economies of scale. This was the first of several pictures taken on the day of the grand opening. The city acquired land for the park in 1999, and my colleague Travis Rubal, who's sitting here in the audience, delivered that project this year. So that's been 19 years in the making. The combining of the construction of the park and the street improvements was beneficial to the property owners. The property owners along Golf Court realized a 15.8% savings on their LID. And this is the final picture from the grand opening. This park now serves 1,359 Southwest Portland residents who previously did not have proximate access to a park. So I really wanted to thank former PBOT Commissioner Novick and former Park Commissioner Fritz for their leadership and their willingness to engage on this LID. One of the things that we were looking at 3 years ago when we were considering whether to do this project, as Commissioner Saltzman pointed out, was the extent of the infrastructure deficiency in Southwest Portland. There's sort of this notion that East Portland has most of the infrastructure backlog when in fact it's in Southwest Portland, so we felt a real sense of urgency to do something. And just to put a picture with statistics, this is what Golf Court used to look like before we did the project. So very narrow street, steep, no safe place to walk. And then really what we were trying to do is to, in conjunction with the park improvements, build a more hospitable place for people to walk where it would be safer and more welcoming. In addition to the pedestrian improvements, we are also trying to deal with the stormwater issues on the street. If you look at that picture to the right, you can see that people were just piping water out to the street and dump it on to their next neighbor below them. We really wanted to deal with those issues on this steep street with grades up to 9.5%. And then this is an after picture showing what the improvements look like. These two pictures were taken at the bottom of the hill. The owner of this property did submit an objection to final assessment, and his representative will be here to speak on that, and I'll be happy to answer any questions you have. So that's the project in a nutshell. We've got a few people here to testify, and happy to answer any follow-up questions you may have.
Very good. Colleagues, any questions before we get to public testimony? Very good. Public testimony, please, Carla.
Yes, we have 3 people signed up.
Very good.
Amy Gerhart, Charles Bridge Crane Johnson, and Lori Sinton.
Thank you, Carla. Good morning.
No, go ahead. Amy, go.
All right, may I start?
Go for it.
Great.
Thank you.
Good morning, I'm Amy Gerhardt, I'm attorney at Sussman Shank, and I represent S&E Properties, LLC, which owns the property at 8619 to 8623 Southwest 30th Street that's within this LID. We're here to object to the allocation and specifically the methodology of the allocation and the number of exempt properties included. And that's the whole body of the objection at this point. So under Oregon law, the city is required to impose a fair and equitable allocation of LID improvements. And it's long established premise in Oregon law that one person's property cannot be improved at the expense of another. And then one owner cannot be forced to pay for improvements that benefit exempt properties, which we believe is happening in this case with my client. So with that being the standard, we think that the proper allocation in this sense is total square footage in the LID as opposed to EDUs. So right now, the allocation is based on the equivalent dwelling units in the area. And so my client has a multifamily property with 22 units, which is one of the higher density properties in the LID. And so what that's done is shifted a lot of the excess cost to my client as opposed to other areas. So on the front of in that presentation, there's a colored map there, and the blue areas show all the exempt properties that are benefiting from access to the transit center, for access to the park. And none of those properties are being charged anything for these assessments. Instead, the allocation is based on EDUs, which is transferred to my client, along with some other clients. What that's done is my client's being forced to pay for almost 19% of the improvement costs, whereas total square footage in the LID, excluding exempt properties, is only 12.5%. So we're paying a much bigger percentage based on this method of allocation. As an example, the park is about 65% of the total square footage, and it's paying for 57%. And as we just heard, there's 1,300 users to that park that are benefiting by the excess pedestrian access, and no one's being charged really but the multifamily development and some city costs. And so we think that that's not fair and equitable as required under Oregon law, and that the appropriate methodology is total square footage. Additionally, the exempt properties are benefiting despite them not necessarily having sidewalks right in front of their house. They have sidewalks across the street now. And as we saw from those pictures, that gives them much better access to transit, to parks. And just because they have sidewalks across the street doesn't mean they're going to access it any less. In fact, what my client has seen is people now loitering, standing, smoking, littering on his property and on the sidewalk near his property now that that's the access point. And so we just ask that the methodology and allocation be reassessed. Thank you.
Thank you.
Hi, My name is Lori Sitton, and thank you, Mayor and Commissioners. I come today as a user and representative of the disability community and the advisory committee that advises Portland Parks and Rec, that meets monthly with different bureau representatives and architects and landscape architects and PBOT and reviewing plans and of the 144 parks. This one in particular, I think, has the amenities that include access for little toddlers and children up to elderly. The pathways are paved. There's some gravel. There's some sawdust, and there are flowers and clover, and the elevation changes from Dolph Court down to southwest to Spring Garden. And it is 4.6 acres of spectacular vegetation. The birds, the butterflies, and there's so much for the children to do. They can access the transfer areas, the swings. There's the rubber ice surfaces. The children can just go from one element to another and just crawl and climb and slide and enjoy the music features. So they can bang on the metal aspects. And when we were there for the 2 hours, I think we must have seen and visited with a dozen different people, dogs, the little children, just enjoying going from the higher level down to the bottom and back up. And the pathways intersect, and the people are just, it is spectacular. I would encourage anyone to go and visit. I think it's one of the gems of the Portland Park system. It doesn't have any programmed access, but it is just a wonderful place to go. People were laying in the sun. People were having a picnic at the picnic areas, just enjoying the swings and the spinning features, little children playing with cars down in the water and it was almost like a little moat that they were running the little cars through. And the little kids would go up and press the button to make the water feature go again. Just, I have to applaud in all the years of participating with Portland Parks and Rec in the advisory council since '95 and even before. Wonderful job with the limited resources.
Commissioner Fix.
Listen, thank you very much for your service on the committee, and thank you for coming today.
Absolutely.
You just made probably my week or year, never mind just my day. Thank you very much.
It was just spectacular.
Thank you.
Good morning, Commissioners. For the record again, Charles Bridge Crane Johnson. And it's been probably over a year since I was here to talk about these wonderful micro-socialisms at Rabbi. It's been about a year since an LID was something that I talked about. And it's interesting to have counsel for the multifamily unit presenting, the real reason for concern here is not, of course, multifamily landlords, but the impact they have on cost-burden renters. So I don't think the total amounts here are going to justify a lot more time to wiggle and jiggle the financing. But I do think that when I talk about local improvement districts as micro-socialism, that the council has raised an interesting point about exemption. When we're talking about private property owners who own single-family or multifamily dwellings, we would hope that everybody has the financial stability and the means to contribute. So blanket exemptions, while a place that has tenants, and I'm totally unfamiliar with this multifamily unit, so I don't know where it fits in the spectrum of rent and the cost burdenness of those tenants. We know that there are tenants, more and more tenants in Portland are not at all cost burdened. They're buying extremely expensive luxury apartments that don't even take up 20% of their income, while other people are paying up to 50% of their income for rent. But I do think that it's important when we have a local improvement district to not be overly generous with exemptions for private single-family homeowners who really do have the means to contribute to something that benefits their whole neighborhood. So I hope that there'll be a fairly simple solution. I don't think it's going to be anything that where the bottom line dollars are going to justify any kind of litigation. But it's a chance for us to get to know these people in this neighborhood, know what their income situations are, wealth disparities and stuff like that. So I hope you'll take council's point to heart, as well as the beautiful story about the actual wonderfulness of the park. For those of you who didn't notice, Commissioner Saltzman specifically gave credit to the excellent community advocacy of a former candidate for this commission, no, maybe it was county, Sue Stahl, Stahl for All, facebook.com, sue.stahl.327. Our community is a little bit sadder, more difficult place without Sue in here encouraging us to all do our best and make Portland even better. Thank you.
Thank you. Thank you all. Was it just those three, Carla?
That's all who signed up.
Very good. Colleagues, anything?
Could we get Andrew, I'll be back to talk about the issue raised by
very good.
legal counsel, please.
Andrew Abbey, Local Improvement District Administrator. Commissioner Fripp, the issues that were raised were summarized in Exhibit F, and there's some pretty detailed findings to all those. I hadn't planned on recapping all of those in detail. The ordinance as written contains the directive to overrule the objection, but I want to make just a couple of very brief points, if I may. The way this process worked is that when Parks first looked at developing this park, PBOT put forth a set of requirements to the Parks Bureau to comply with the condition of getting a building permit for the park. So what we did is we estimated the LID for the cost of parks meeting their required frontage improvements, and then we also estimated the marginal cost of the improvements along Dolph Court down to Southwest 30th Avenue. So what we have here is a zoned assessment methodology where parks paid the same amount that they would have paid anyway, and then the other property owners then pay the marginal cost of doing the rest of the project. The other thing I just wanted to share is that the combination of the cost savings and a lower interest rate than what applied at LID formation is that on a per equivalent dwelling unit basis, if financed over 20 years, it was estimated to be $76 per month at LID formation. It's now $62 a month with the savings. And then finally, what I would say is that the properties that were exempted in the LID did not receive any frontage improvements. And I think we start looking at a little bit of a slippery slope if we start pulling in properties that didn't receive frontage improvements, particularly if that is not done during the formation stage, and we're now coming in at final assessment and wanting to make a change. These are types of issues that really should be raised at the formation stage. But that said, I'm very comfortable with the assessment methodology. And I think the fact that we had another property owner with about a 9% less assessment who did not object to the final assessment is an indication that the assessment methodology is fair.
Thank you.
Any further questions? This is the first reading of a non-emergency. Commissioner Fritz.
Thank you so much.
Sure.
I just have to comment on this project. I was one of the community members advocating to Commissioner Francisconi in 1999 to purchase this property from the school district. I used to live on Dolph Court. I'm really glad I don't anymore because I probably couldn't have authorized building this project because it would have been a clear conflict of interest, although my children are now all gone. So that, anyway, that's my history with this project. If you just, colleagues, indulge me, look at page 4. This park is called Spring Garden Park, and this is what it looks like in spring with the clarkia and the clover. If you look at it now, it's not quite so spectacular in terms of the flowering because it's not spring flowers. It's going to be wonderful next spring, and I very much appreciate Ms. Sitton describing all of the interesting different things that you can do on a hillside slope. It's amazing, amazing engineering work. Travis Rybal from Portland Parks and Recreation is here. He was the project manager. I just have to also tell you that a couple of weeks ago we opened the splash pad at Fernhill. Which, like this project, was done with system development charges or impact fees. Travis designed the splash pad art. It's in the shape of a fiddlehead fern, which for Fernhill Park is quite impressive. And not only that, but he and the contractor for that project were able to save, I think, in the region of $500,000 under budget, and so they're able to add other elements to that park. So, Travis, your work is absolutely spectacular. I know that this particular Spring Garden Park is one of the jewels of the crown, thanks to you and your team. And I just am really, really excited that over 1,000 people have this new park, thanks to Suzanne Stahl and the advisory committee within Portland Parks and Recreation for their advice on the accessibility issues. This isn't a Harper's Playground or a fully accessible playground, but every one of the playgrounds that we have done with either Parks Development Charge, Park System Development Charges or the Parks Bond have many, many aspects of accessible, inclusive play, and I'm happy about that. And finally, I do need to thank Laurie Howell, who was the chief neighborhood person who really pushed for this project, got people excited about it, and rallied the community. It wasn't always easy. I can remember a particular time of going out to this project where I was lucky to escape with my life, it seemed like, but we've come through it, and I think it speaks for itself now. Please go visit it if you can.
Excellent, very good. This is a first reading of a non-emergency ordinance. It moves to second reading. Thank you, Andrew. And colleagues, I am due at the Metropolitan Mayor's Alliance today. We are taking a vote on affordable housing, so I want to make sure I'm there for it. Thank you. Commissioner Saltzman,
Okay.
it's all yours.
Thanks, Mayor. So our next item is 943. Could you read that, please?
Accept bid of Skyward Construction, Inc. for the 1900 building restroom upgrades for $1,488,592.
Welcome, our Larry Palat, and want to give us the overview of this?
Good morning, Commissioners. Thank you very much. I am Larry Palat, Procurement Services. You have before you the procurement report recommending a contract award to Skyward Construction for the 1900 building restroom upgrades in the amount of $1,488,592. The Chief Procurement Officer advertised the project on the city's electronic procurement system, received bids. The engineer's estimate on this project was $1,325,792 and was included in the authorizing ordinance. Facilities confidence level at that time was listed as optimal. Bids were opened on July 31st, 2018. 2 bids were received. The low bid from Skyward Construction was responsive to the solicitation requirements. Thus, it's recommended that the bid be accepted at the estimated lump sum quote total of $1,488,592, which is $162,800 or 12.28% over the engineer's estimate. The basis of the project and part of the reason for the overage, we are mitigating some ADA deficiencies, which we are required by federal law. We added some general neutral restrooms, which are pursuant to not then current city policy, and there's some additional energy efficiency upgrades. Skyward Construction, acting as the general contractor, identified the following areas as opportunities for participation: cleaning, HVAC repair, and painting. There is only $46,900 or 3.2% certified firms subcontracting on the project, apportioned as follows. All of the money is to DBE or disadvantaged business enterprises. 3 firms performing all 3 areas of work: cleaning, HVAC repair, and painting. The Skyward Construction did meet the subcontractor equity requirements for outreach and effort. The current market is such that a lot of times subcontractors are just not ready to bid. I mean, they're busy. Everybody's busy in the marketplace. Skyward Construction is located in Ridgefield, Washington. They are not a State of Oregon certified disadvantaged minority women or emerging small business. They have a current City of Portland business tax registration. They're in full compliance with all of the city's contracting requirements. If the council has any questions regarding the bidding process, I can answer those. Or we do have Randy Selleck from Facilities and Erica Cheek from Skyward Construction in chambers if council wishes to call them up for questions.
Yes, I'd like to hear from Skyward Construction about their outreach efforts regarding the disadvantaged women, minority businesses. Thank
Yes,
you.
ma'am. Erica, there you go.
Hello,
Hello,
Good morning. Can you tell us your name and just talk to me a little bit about how you tried to get more?
Erica Cheek with Skyward Construction. So usually what I do is I go through I think it's the COBID website. and-
Do you have any idea what that stands
It's
for?
COBID. It's the state certification website.
Thank you.
And I look for the classifications that we need to reach out to. I create a spreadsheet and I email all the trades, and so they have all the documents, the specs, and the plans. And then usually within a week, I follow up to make sure they're bidding. This time for this job, most of my calls went to voicemail, but I leave a message, make sure they know that they can call me back. But we didn't get a lot of participation for this. A lot of people, usually they tell me they're very busy, they don't have time to bid on this job. That's usually what I hear.
And have you had better success in other projects?
Not at this time of year, no. Everyone's very busy.
Well, thank you for
We are finding the same thing, that so many subcontractors are overworked. Well, they're getting lots of money, but they're very, very busy, and we are having almost all of our vendors are having serious issues with getting to certified subcontractors.
Yeah, there's obviously some business opportunities for more firms to enter the market. So, but that takes a lot of capital and a lot of know-how and building those businesses. So thank you for your efforts and thank you for being here. I appreciate that.
More questions?
Okay. Any more questions? Okay, accept the motion to accept the report.
Second?
Okay, moved and seconded. Please call the roll.
I'm sorry, who moved the report?
Dan moved and
I moved it.
seconded.
Thank you. Udaley?
Aye.
Fritz?
Aye.
Fish?
Aye.
Saltzman?
Aye. Okay, thank you.
Thank you all very much.
And our next item is 9:45.
Authorize a competitive solicitation and contract with the lowest responsible bidder and provide for payment for major retrofits for replacement of fuel facilities project.
Hi.
Great, yeah, I'll just introduce the OMF Facilities Construction Project Manager, Sharon Rayner.
Hi, yes.
Tell us about it, yeah.
As stated, Sharon Raymore with OMF Facilities. I'm the project manager that's overseeing the design and the construction of this project on behalf of City Fleet. And this project that's before you is to upgrade 4 of the existing city fuel stations, one at the Columbia Wastewater Treatment Plant, one at Interstate Water Bureau, and the other 2 are at Jefferson Garage and the Kelly Penumbra Building over in East Portland. This project is replacing out-of-date and well past their life cycle infrastructure components related to the fuel delivery. So we're replacing fuel tanks, pumps, pipes, and actually increasing capacity of fuel storage at these sites as well. So it's a long time coming, and I know that we're pleased to have it at this point where we're ready to bid.
Thank you. Any questions? Okay, is there any testimony?
No one signed up?
Anybody wish to testify on this item? Okay, is this an emergency or?
Yes, it is.
Okay, emergency, so please call the roll.
Udaley?
Aye.
Fritz?
Thank you for your work and for coming to explain it. Aye.
Fish?
Aye.
Saltzman?
Thank you. Aye. Okay, it's, the item is adopted, and our last item is 9:46.
Authorize $15 million of long-term bonds for local improvement and sidewalk repair projects and financing of system development charges, plus additional amounts for issue costs.
I'll turn this over to our debt manager, Eric Johansson.
Thank you, Commissioner Saltzman. First of all, if I could take just a moment, I wanted to introduce Matt Gierach to you. Matt is the city's new debt manager. As you may know, I'm stepping down at the end of October. Matt is filling in and has been around for a month now, and we'll have a couple more months of shifting what I know into his brain. And Matt comes to us from D.A. Davidson, an investment banking firm, and very, very well versed in the bond world, and I think he's going to do a great job as the city's new debt manager. So,
welcome.
So the ordinance this morning is a non-emergency ordinance. It authorizes the issuance of up to $15 million in limited tax improvement bonds to finance assessment contracts for local improvement districts, sidewalk repairs, and system development charges. Under Oregon law, the city is authorized to construct publicly owned and operated local improvements that specially benefit properties, to assess those properties for the cost of the local improvements, and to issue limited tax bonds to finance the cost of the improvements. The city is also authorized to offer financing to property owners and developers for sidewalk repairs and system development charges, and to issue bonds to finance those charges. The bonds that will be issued are expected to be repaid from these assessment contracts. Although the bonds are secured by the city's full faith and credit, the structure of the assessment program is such that we don't expect that the general fund will be called upon to support the debt service on these bonds. We are asking for $15 million. It looks like the actual amount now will be closer to 11, so it'll be a little smaller issue than we originally thought. We expect to sell these bonds in a competitive sale late in October and closing 1st of November. Happy to take any questions.
Questions? Okay, well, thank you very much. Welcome.
Thank you.
Any testimony on this?
No one signed up.
Anybody that wish to testify? Seeing none. This is a first reading, so it'll move to a second reading next week. And with that, we are adjourned until 2 p.m.